Yeah, it's live on YouTube. Recording is paused. We can. Yeah. So I'll mute myself. Fariz ma'am.
Can I start, ma'am?
So can I be on? Okay.
I've just admitted all. Yeah.
A very good morning. On behalf of Sriniketan Group of Schools, I extend a warm welcome to all of you. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker, Ms. Vinaya Shri Jagadish, who will enlighten us about the career options in journalism and writing. Ms. Vinaya is a content writer with National Law School of India. She has worked as a senior correspondent in leading English dailies such as The Times of India and Hindu. She has anchored reporting roles across different areas, including education, civic issues, and crime. On the education front, she has covered extensively on the right to education, on policy changes to higher education, and how it impacts students, teachers, and parents. Ms. Vinaya has anchored Mission Admission, a yearly exercise that gives glimpse of emerging career options to guide the students after class 12. I cannot close the introduction without mentioning her anchoring initiative, which could collect Rs 30 lakh towards education of underprivileged children. It is an honor to have you here today, ma'am. Dear audience, I would like to mention that this webinar is being broadcasted live on our YouTube channel as well. I now request Ms. Vinaya Shri to take over.
Hi, good morning, Ms. Faris. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And good morning to all of you. And I thank Sriniketan Group of Schools, Ms. Priya, Bharani sir, and Mr. Vishnu Charan for giving me such a nice opportunity to interact with all of you. And my only intention is to hopefully give some clarity in whatever doubts you may have, and guide you in hopefully developing an interest in journalism or writing or content writing, and give you a broad overview of what a journalism degree can lead you into. So let me give you a broad outline first. And I'm not going to do a presentation because I want it to be more interactive in nature. I also heard that there are some questions that students have sent in, and I'm more interested in answering those so that I can help give you some clarity on those issues. But let me start with some of the basics so that you have a broad overview. Okay. So first, I would like all of you to ask yourself as to why journalism attracts you as a career option or as a study option even. Now, there are certain personal strengths for everybody. For every student will have a personal strength. And I want you all to draw from that, because you need to develop on that, and that is what will help you in journalism. Your personality, the way you are with people, the way you interact with people, your nose for news, as they say, and your writing skills, your communicating skills, all these come into play. So I would want you individually to think about what you want out of the study option or how you want to develop it further. So why journalism is a question that I want every student to ask themselves, and ponder on what it is that attracts you. Because there's a lot of different portrayals, if you see even in movies and media, about how journalists may be or how newsrooms are. Spotlight or No One Killed Jessica, all these are, and many portrayals of journalists, and there's a lot of glamorized versions also in mainstream media of the way it's portrayed. I don't want you to get swayed by all that, because there's no one set concept that, okay, a journalist is only like that or a newsroom will only function like this. It's a lot of work that goes into it, and what is shown in movies is probably very surface level that you can see. So I want you to understand more about what goes on intrinsically so that you get a better idea on that. So I'm just going to keep looking at some of these points so that I make sure that I don't forget telling you these. So the basics, I'm sure you already know because you're all smart students, but I'm just going to cover it anyway. So in journalism, there's obviously 4 different kinds of streams. One is print, one is broadcast, which includes TV and radio. And then there comes online or new media, which is the biggest trend right now because everybody is going online, and especially because of the COVID pandemic now, the emphasis on online media has grown so much, especially over the last year, where even print industries are transitioning more into online and promoting articles online, new media, so that it's all interlinked nowadays. And so these are the 4 kinds, and we'll get into more details of what goes into each of these streams. That is the print, TV, radio, and new media, which is online. But coming to the aspect of covering different kinds of news. Now, you all know there's hard news and there's soft news, right? So hard news is more of your impactful, hard breaking stories, main stories that make a day-to-day impact on people's lives. It could be civic, it could be transport, it could be crime, it could be education, it could be any of these major, impactful breaking stories and all the things that impact society on a day-to-day basis. And the other would be soft news, which is more on a feature-ish level, where it's more about human interest stories, which talk more about people, talk more about art, culture, movies, different kinds. Now, soft news is a whole other field where there's a lot of scope. It depends, again, it comes down to how you are as a person and what you are inclined towards. So there are 2 kinds of news, which you already, I'm sure, may know, but if there's any doubts about this, I can always answer later. Now, the one thing that I want to tell you as students is that, there is this thing that you have to study a journalism degree to get into journalism. But I must tell you that there are a lot of students who have come out of a non-journalism background who have done very well in journalism as well. Because a specialized degree in something, for example, like a commerce degree, could help you in business journalism, right? Or a science background could help you in covering science and tech in journalism. So there is no closed doors here, because you can always do, even if you suppose you do an engineer, and I must tell you, the number of engineers who came to my journalism college where I studied was so many. I was surprised at that point of time that so many engineers had transitioned into a journalism course at the PG level. But that is something that is an advantage, where you don't have to feel like, oh, if I don't do a journalism degree, I can never get in. There are certain advantages by doing a journalism degree, which I will get into later. But there is, as students, I think you should know that it doesn't mean that you're closing your options if you take up even another course, because there's always scope for you to build on your knowledge level and get into a particular beat. So beats are what it's called in journalism, where different fields are called beats. So there's crime beat, there's education beat, there's civic beat, there is business beat as a beat. So there's multiple beats. And so that specialized knowledge is always helpful. So suppose you want to take up science tomorrow, after class 10 as a group, it's perfectly fine. I also did science in my 11th and 12th, and then went on to do my journalism at the UG undergraduate level. So it is not an issue that you have to pick only a humanities background or a particular kind of background, because you can transition, and also that kind of extra knowledge that you gain can be helpful in your writing or your communication aspect tomorrow in journalism. So the other thing is now on your own individual's personality, which is the most important aspect of it. It's about communication, right? So it comes down to how clearly you want to communicate things. It's all, the emphasis is all on that. And many times people think that, oh, I'm not a great writer, or I'm not a, I don't have certain skills that I may not be great at it. But honestly, it is if you keep it simple, most of the times it's about communicating clearly and simply to the people in the way they understand. And that is the same whether you are a reader tomorrow and you're reading a newspaper. It has to be simple enough to be communicated to you clearly. The language can always be developed well, but you shouldn't worry too much about I have to write a particular way or I have to talk a particular way to make it sound impressive. That's not the point. The point is about keeping it simple and communicating well. And reading, I think these are some of the things I'd like to tell you on how you can develop or cultivate an interest or a style in this kind of thing. Is that I think you need to read a lot. The more you read, because you're absorbing language, right? Whether you're reading or you're listening to news or you're even interacting with people, the more you interact in the language, it could be, for example, suppose tomorrow you want to do Tamil journalism and you're very good, you're very articulate in Tamil. That would be great. I mean, that would help you in articulating very well on what you want to say. It depends on the language in which you're comfortable with as well. Suppose you want to do English, then how much of a how much are you actually absorbing through reading or listening or talking to people? That is something that you can always build on your vocabulary, on your language, and it can help you cultivate a certain way of communicating to people. Because when you're going all over the place, you'll never get to the point. So there's a certain ways you can also absorb this material. In fact, All India Radio had some very nice the speakers who would articulate so well their language and the way they communicate. It's really impressive. So I would suggest and advise that you listen and read a lot so that you can also develop further. It inspires you to develop certain styles of speaking or writing. And the other thing is how you can develop is don't compare. Another person may write very well in a particular way. You may have your own style, and that's fine. You don't have, there is no prescribed right or wrong. There is only your style, right? So, and you need to focus on developing that. Now, one thing that I have done, and a lot of people also I know, is journaling. That is, you maintain a journal, and this may not be for everybody, but this is something earlier it used to be when I was growing up, a lot of people used to write journals, and nowadays it's more online where it's more blogging, right? So there could be anything, whatever suits you is fine. But I used to journal a lot. It's more about writing for myself, and I would write, just understanding what I like to write about, how I would like to present something, and later would I like to read it. When I read it, what do I think of it? Do I want to make it sound better? It's a way of understanding your own style when you're writing. So journaling is something very personal, but can also help in developing a certain style for yourself. And right now, a lot of blogging is going on. So you create a blog online. It's very simple. A lot of people are doing that. And you start writing on whatever you want to write about. You can keep it private. You can publish it and make it, public for everyone to read. It depends. Or you can share it with a select few friends or your family members and ask them what they think. But blogging is another great way to practice your style, to cultivate a style. And nobody will get it immediately. Nobody will get everything right first time. So it takes a few years to develop that style, and that's okay. I mean, you're all I think at the right time where you can probably start experimenting with these kind of activities if you already haven't started, because I know a lot of people already do this. And if you're doing it, great. But that's one way of cultivating a style. And now coming to also the personality type, right? So journalism and communications both are fields where you do need to have a certain level of social interaction. So you are expected to interact with people, meet a lot of people. In journalism especially, you will be meeting a lot of people. If you're reporting, that is. On the desk side, it is more of editing, which I will get to later. But if you're a reporter, you will be on the ground. You will go and meet a lot of people. And you also need to find out whether you are comfortable with that. It can always be developed. For example, if you're more of the analytical, reflective kind of person who likes to do more of a research-oriented writing, that's a different kind of journalism is also there. But if you're more of the reporting type where you have to meet people, if you're the type who's social and who's very easy to talk to people and all that, it will help you a lot more, because See, you're meeting new people on a day-to-day basis, and you need to connect with them. You need to make them comfortable enough to actually open up and talk to you about things, whether it's an interview or whether you're writing about some critical issues. Or, for example, to share a personal example, when I was covering crime, a lot of it is, of course, crime news is a lot of hard news reporting where there's um, it's not easy to see certain things, but there is also a very human side of crime, because wherever there is crime there is also loss. You must remember that if somebody is affected, there's a family around which gets affected emotionally. So there is one aspect which is the front end, which is the crime part, which is very hard, and which is you can't get emotional in that aspect. You will see a lot of things which will make you learn about life and how a lot of things work. But there's also an emotional side where the families of people who are affected can be very emotional, and in those circumstances to talk to people, it's not easy, because for them to open up to you or to talk about something so personal that they're going through, because these are human interest stories, like we call them. For example, a bomb blast that happened in Bangalore a couple of years ago shattered so many people's lives. And when an auto rickshaw driver had helped certain people who were near the area where the blast had happened to immediately rush them to the hospital without even waiting for anybody. Now he's a good Samaritan who helped out in a time of crisis, and that auto rickshaw driver, to talk to him and find out his version of how he saw it happen, or how he immediately rushed, and how they contacted him, or he went on his own. Now that is a human side of things. That is a story to tell. That's a story that will interest people on how somebody was rescued from a scene of crime, right? And that's the human side. So there's always two different sides, and when you there's a certain skill that you will develop as you go by, where you try to make people open up and talk to you about these things, because they're already in so much trauma in certain situations like that, that it may not be easy to get people to open up. But there are some where I've also seen where they're very open and willing to talk to you, because they want to just vent out what they're feeling, the frustration they're feeling. And sometimes it helps that it's a stranger who's listening to them, because the others are all very emotional around them. So there are both kinds of people. You're dealing with a different set of people every day. And that's the thing with journalism. Every day may not be the same. You may be interacting with different sets of people on a day-to-day basis. There are some days where you will also spend on your desk doing more research-oriented stories. For example, mission admission, like what Miss Priya was saying earlier, that that is something where we ran a series where it's about guiding students on the career options they want to pursue. That is something where you're talking to different sets of people again, but it's on one. There's a focus. There's a certain focus. So you're not really going around every other day, but you will plan it accordingly, and you will talk to different kinds of people from different fields. But that's what I'm saying. The social interaction part will be high in a field like reporting, where you will be required to talk to a lot of people and interact with people. And it depends on your personality type on how you want to get into it. Suppose you're the type who says, no, I don't want to, interact with people on a day-to-day basis. I'm more of the type who just would like to sit on a desk in the corner, do a quiet writing or editing and go. Then maybe a desk job is more suitable, where you are on the back end of things. You may not be on the field, you may not be reporting, but you are handling the editing aspect of an article, where you will sit and give headlines, where you will try to make a copy read better, an article read better, and you will be sitting on your desk and you will ask for certain numbers and coordinate. There are different kinds of roles even in journalism. So it depends on your personality type. So I would also like you to reflect on what you want to do, what suits you and what you're comfortable with. I don't want you to push yourself into becoming uncomfortable, but there are certain things, like as you interact, you also become comfortable in the job. There are certain things you learn on the job. So there's nothing fixed, but it would be nice if you understood yourself on what you feel good with, and then we can go in that direction. So that would be something to keep in mind. Now, COVID impact, because I want to talk about that, since this is a very different era that we are living in. It's a new challenge for everybody. I hope I'm not going too fast. Please tell me if I am. But I just wanted to cover all the points in the given time. So the COVID impact has impacted the print industry a lot right now. The newspapers and magazines would be the print industry. And there have been people who have lost their jobs like any other field, not just journalism. There are a lot of people whose jobs have been impacted. But so they're also, like I said, they're transitioning into the online thing. Already all of them had their online versions. But it is a more of a challenge right now to adapt to that kind of a field where you are looking more into the online trends, because everybody can read things online. It doesn't mean that it will not revive. That's not the point. But I'm saying that if you're looking at writing, you should look at writing for both print and online. Given the current circumstances, we need to keep them in mind. And even for while applying for colleges, I think it's a different situation where, you know, students may not have thought that they'll be doing online classes. I'm sure I would have liked to come and interact with you personally in a classroom, you know, rather than just online. But that's the way it is right now. And even when you're applying to colleges, the experience may differ, but that's fine. I think this is the new normal we have to adapt to. So a college experience also may change. I don't know, for in the next year or two, we'll have to see. But when you're applying to colleges, let me come to that aspect. So English literature and journalism degrees are definitely preferred by companies who want to hire people for a, you know, a newspaper or a broadcast network. There is a certain preference that happens. Like I said, specialized knowledge will never be an issue. Suppose you're an engineer who later does your post graduation in journalism, it is not a problem. Suppose you're a commerce student who's done his undergraduate in commerce or accounts and then gets into post graduation in journalism, it is not a problem. Or even sciences, pure sciences, it is not an issue. But there is a certain preference for English literature and journalism degree graduates. I'm just telling you how the industry works. That is how there is a preference, because they feel that maybe you would have had more practice in writing and communicating, which is key, right, for journalism. So that would be there. And also for internships, I think this is a very important aspect. Even for internships, they do prefer to hire people who are from a journalism or an English literature background. Not that maybe if you do know people and you're well connected with certain networks where you can say, okay, this is what I've done on the side. Even if I'm a science student, I've done blogging, I've done journaling, and I have certain articles that I've written. You can show them what a sample, and people can also get in like that for internship. It's not an issue, but there is a certain preference for these kind of degree graduates. And choosing, yeah, so internships, why I'm stress on internships, and I've said this to every person who's interested in journalism, is because you will never actually understand the job unless you do it on the ground. And internships is one of the best ways to find out whether you're cut out for this kind of field. So if you want to actually find out what it's like, just do an internship. And good colleges nowadays actually, even at the undergraduate degree, encourage you to get into internships at, you know, your second year or your third year. So you should please explore internships, because that gives you a very realistic sense of what you will be doing on a day-to-day basis, and you can decide even then whether this is the field you want to continue with or not. Because I have had a couple of interns who've come from different colleges in Chennai when we were you know, in Times, and a few of them felt very excited by it and really liked it and really liked the writing aspect. A few of them felt maybe this is not for me. So there are different sets of people. So an internship would be very, very important. And when you're also applying to colleges, I think choose a good college, obviously, which would be your priority. At the post-graduation level, especially, I will mention a few names because there is a certain standard. So one would be Asian College of Journalism in Chennai, where I also studied there. The other is IIJNM Bangalore, which is also very good, and Symbiosis, of course, in Pune. So these are some of the institutes which have a very high standard of learning and also exposure. I think it's more of the exposure they give you to the various streams and the kind of learning and the practical hands-on approach that you get. and also the talks that you listen to, the speakers who come. So I've heard very, very good reviews about these schools and recommendations. So I'm sharing those with you as well. At the undergraduate level, choose a good college which has a good structure. I think most of the colleges now have a very decent, they cover all the different streams already at the undergraduate level. So you're kind of well equipped to, go to the post-graduation level, because it just elaborates further on what you have learned with more practical approach. And I think, even colleges have radio stations and they have their own broadcast stations, which used to not be the case in a lot of colleges earlier. But now I think there's a lot more exposure, which is great. So choosing a good college would make a difference, even especially at the post-graduation level, because the placement opportunities are very key for you to get into the industry. If you get it through placement, it's actually a very easy way to get into the industry. So I would suggest you pick very good colleges specifically and see what you're looking for there. Yeah, the nature of job, I have already talked about this. So it depends on different fields. It depends on breeds, whether it is education, crime, civic. Like I said, it can differ from area to area. A lot of hard work goes in. I must tell you that it is not just glamorized. Or see, a lot of students do get influenced by the television journalists, especially. There is a lot of work that goes on in the back end. I actually studied broadcast in my post-graduation. So we had to produce TV shows on a day-to-day basis. And the kind of work that actually gets in, and even my colleagues who are there in the TV industry, it is not easy. It works in shifts. And there is a lot of effort that goes in. So what you may see on screen may look very, pleasing or very prepared and all that. But there is a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes also. And there's a whole team of people who are working to put all that news together. The difference, I think, basically with the TV and the print is that you get more time with print, where you get more time to research and make sure that certain facts are right before you put it out. Of course, it comes down to the nature of the reporter also, how thorough he or she may be in putting out a story or an article, and making sure that you get everything cross-checked. But in TV, there may not be that much time sometimes. And so you'll have to work under a little more pressure to deliver those things in the deadlines that they give. Deadlines is a very important part of journalism, because you are, even in print, you are working towards a deadline. At the end of the day, your article needs to go out. In TV, by the time of the show, by the time the rundown comes, you have to put out your story or your script. So there is a certain deadline. The deadline mentality is very strong in journalism. You have to work with the deadline. With magazines, it's different. There are some monthly magazines or bi-monthly magazines, fortnightly, where you will work with a deadline later in the month, probably, that I have to produce, okay, this many articles, or edit this many articles in a month, have discussions. So there's more time. So it depends on the stream that you choose also. Radio, again, is a different thing, where that gets, if you're getting into something like an RJ or something, that is a different thing, where there will be scripts to prepare, of course, even there. But it's all interlinked. It's not like if you get into TV, you can never get into print or radio, or if you get into print, you can never get into TV or radio or online. They're all interlinked. So once you get that experience going, the communicating aspect, the writing aspect, because those two are important in all four fields and streams, no matter what. So once you get into one, you can always transition into the other depending on what your interest is. And don't get disheartened that I wanted a particular, suppose, after you finish your graduation or post-graduation, you wanted to get into TV and you didn't get an opportunity. That's fine. You can always transition later. It's not like it has to come immediately. And sometimes jobs may not come immediately, especially in the current circumstance that we are living in. We have to be more realistic and practical and just see what works at that point of time. You can always switch because they're all interlinked. And once you get into the network, I'm telling you, people will automatically call you if they feel that, you're suited for this. It doesn't matter whether you're in this stream or that stream. That will happen automatically. So don't worry too much about that. The other thing is the unpredictable aspect of journalism, which in terms of the timings, right? So it's not always predictable. It depends on what news comes hard news especially I'm talking about. Feature news or soft news is more predictable, where you will be planning out things, where you will be you'll have a calendar where you'll say, okay, by this time I have to finish certain things. But with hard news, anything can break anytime. So the news can happen anywhere, anytime, and you might be called to cover it. It's not like that every day. It depends on what beat you're covering or what field you're covering. For example, crime is more unpredictable than many other fields. With education, when I covered education, it was a lot more, because universities or institutions or schools work at a certain time, and even if there are certain things, they're usually announced during the day. It may not be all the time at night, right? So there is a certain uh, time format that you could probably follow with certain beats. But with certain things that may happen automatically or without warning, you may have to be prepared for going at a certain hour and doing it. It may not be on a day-to-day basis. Again, I'm saying don't get to work worried about it, but that is a part of journalism. You can't say that I can't come now. With certain kinds of news, you will be asked to pitch in. um, for example, the floods or the cyclones that happened, Varda, for example, in Chennai. It was difficult, and people had to report, because you can't just say, you may be working from home. That's a different thing, but you still have to make your calls. You still have to cover what is happening in the city, because it's important that people understand what is happening, and you may get certain information that others may not have access to. So you need to put it out there. So you can't say that, oh, it's cyclone, so I may not, I think it's too scary, or I'm not very sure of working. You may have to work on certain such situations also, but nobody will force you to, nobody will make you risk your lives. It is not like that, because everybody is concerned about keeping health and safety first. Even during the COVID pandemic, most of the reporters are working from home even now, where they're interacting more like this on Zoom sessions, on calls, and making sure that the stories get put out there, that the information gets put out there. It doesn't mean that you have to go out every time. A lot of things can be done from home as well, or from the office as well. It just depends on the kind of news that happens at that point of time. This is an exceptional circumstance right now that we are dealing with. But even when there are certain important things that's happening, you may not be able to say, okay, I want to take a holiday today. That is not something that you can think of very easily, because journalism is about getting the news to the people. So you can't say, I can't do that. And if that is the type where you want a more relaxed attitude, then maybe the newspaper on a day-to-day hard news may not be for you. That may be a different thing. But for some, it may be very exciting to be in the middle of all that activity, and just covering it, making sure that people get what they need to hear. People, we're actually helping out people in certain ways. When For example, even during the cyclones, and there were people were reaching out to newspapers to help them, and they would tell us if they were stranded, and we would help connect them with the right people, so that some help could go to them. Even with students, for example, if they've had issues with certain educational examinations or something, people would reach out and tell us, and we'd like to try to connect them to the right people. So there's always a very helpful orientation as well in reporting and getting the news out there. So I think it depends on what you find exciting. Again, that is why I was talking about your personality, because it comes down to the kind of person that you are and what you'd like to, this can be very exciting as well. But there is a lot of work that goes in, and we shouldn't forget that. It's not a glamorized version that you may see in the movies, which is what I was saying. But it is active. Yes, it's very active, unlike desk, which may be a little more, it more works more in timings, and with certain timings, and you'll have to work during those timings. So it depends on that. Then the other thing, with desk, again, making the copy read better, I've already covered these things. I'm just making sure that I don't forget telling you them. Editing would be the focus with certain desk jobs, where you will be working on writing, making a copy better, or writing, even in the broadcast end of things, writing a script for your show, or writing a script even for, I'll get to content writing as well in a bit. But desk is a lot more organized way, I would say, of working. The other I'd also like, now that I've spoken so much about journalism, I'd also get into other kinds of writing, because these degrees that you do, whether it is journalism or English, or if you are in journalism, again, like how the four streams are interlinked, like print, TV, radio, online. Similarly, in a larger communications umbrella, all these fields get into play. So journalism is one of the areas where you are obviously communicating, which becomes the key thing. Now there are other multiple avenues that have come up, which is very popular. Now content writing is something that is very popular. With content writing, again, it is so vast. The range is so vast. So I came from a journalism degree, but I also did some content writing, right? But it depends on whether you like it or you don't like it. For example, your Swiggy or your Ola, or all these newsletters that you get on your mails or your messages, which kind of entice you to come and try out something new. Now that a lot of content writers are doing now, where they write something which is appealing to a brand, that gets into content writing and marketing are very closely associated nowadays. So you get into, and it's more crisp, it's more to the point with content writing. A lot of these kind of content marketing strategies are more crisp and to the point, whereas long form articles also are done. In journalism, there's a lot of long form. In content writing also, there are brands. So what happens is, there are a lot of these companies and brands that may hire content writers to write something that they needed to be presented in a particular way. They may want content writers to write articles for a newspaper, to be given to a newspaper, or they may want it for their websites, or they may want it for their internal circulation. So they will need good writing skills mainly for presenting in the way they may have a certain vision. They will tell you the vision. As a content writer, it's your job to make sure that that vision is delivered on paper and on a site, and it's shown how they want it to be portrayed, how a brand may want to be portrayed, or how a company may want to be portrayed. So it depends on that. With content writing also, there are these videos now, right? There's a lot of videos that happen. So with that comes scripting. So when it comes to, see, again, it comes down, like I said, it's all interlinked. It's, if you have good writing skills, you can do all of these. So when you're scripting a video, you do a storyboard, you go into how you want. For example, I'm going to do a particular restaurant. I'm going to cover and write or make a video about a restaurant, right? So a brand wants it. So I script out a narrative where I'm talking about what the customers want to know, what we need to tell them, and how we connect the two, and make a script, make a presentation, kind of a storyboard, and then go and actually shoot the video and edit it. Now, this comes more into the broadcast side of things, where you will be learning, editing softwares as part of your course. You will be learning camera work as part of your course. So if you're someone who's interested in learning camera work and handling cameras, that is also a part of broadcast courses. So you'll have to specialize again. There may be, it depends on the course you're taking. So when you take something like that, that gets into the video aspect of it, the editing aspect of it, the production of a video aspect. And that's on the content writing and marketing. But there's also digital marketing. I don't want to get too much into it because it involves a lot more marketing trends rather than writing. So I'm focusing on the writing aspect, but that is again another field that's coming up very, very well. Digital marketing, because there's a lot of social media emphasis and search engine optimization, which is very it's the in thing now. So there are digital marketing specific courses which you can also take up. If you have good writing skills, a lot of people look whether you can transition from a content writer to a digital marketing. A lot of people also are looking for such people in digital marketing. So that's another field where your writing skills can come in handy. It may not be the exact field in terms of skills and technical expertise, but if you're good in writing, that is also a field you can get into, I'm saying. Then there is, of course, communications roles. And before that, let me get into freelance, because freelance is another big field right now. With freelance, it's more important to actually, I think once you're established as a name or as person who's written a lot of articles or who's done a lot of work, you have a body of work to represent, automatically you can work with companies where you may not have to work on a full-time basis. You will do it on a freelance basis, where you will say that, I will give you about 5 articles in a week, or 10 articles in a month. It depends on what kind of, like, a lot of these magazines, or even I think travel, I'm not sure how big of a field it is right now, but it used to be there earlier, where travel magazines or real estate magazines, or it depends who would ask for people to freelance for them. Even newspapers also, there are a lot of freelance options. It depends on what you want to get into. So they may ask you for a certain number of articles in a month, and you will get paid accordingly, to the company policy. But this is something that I would suggest. Freelance is something that you should get into after you've gotten a little bit of experience, because people will always value your experience and will also pay you better if you have a certain body of work to already show them that I have done this much, I can write well, so I'm going to be, doing it for you. But if you go as a fresher, people may not really value that much, or may not even pay you that well, because they will look for experience. That is how it works in most industries, I think, so it shouldn't be surprising. But freelance is a convenient option where you work for a bit and you understand how it works, and then you can do it at your own pace. So if you're the type who's more relaxed, who wants to be at home, who doesn't want to have this daily deadlines, freelance is an option you can explore. But I would suggest do that after a few years and not as a fresher. It will be better for you, because you also will learn certain things in the way the industry works, I think, for you to communicate with the companies later. Um, and in terms of, blogging, of course, I've already said that blogging is something you can start right now. You can just open a blog of your own, write about whatever you like, and just keep it. Just keep writing, keep blogs. If you want to go outside and just take some pictures of an interesting place that you went to, capture some emotions, and you feel like writing about it, just write it. It's a blog. It will always help you, because tomorrow, even if you want to go for an internship, you can show your blog and say, this is what I've written. And if you like my work, maybe you could consider me for an internship, when you're applying. And even for a job, there a lot of people ask for blogs, blog links, if you already have one. So a lot of people, what happened was, earlier, many people used to not keep a lot of blogs. They used to get into jobs, so they would share links of articles. But nowadays, I think blogging has become a lot more popular, because it's something very easy to do, and you can do it at any age. There's no, you don't have to, you can start even in middle school or whenever you want to. If you want to write about something, you either write it in a book, or now it's blogging, so it's on a site. And even creating these blogs are very simple now, because WordPress and all these, so many platforms are there online, where it's very easy to create and free of cost, right? So that is one. And now finally, I will come to communication roles, because that is something that I'm currently involved in, because I did venture into the other two. Now with communications, again, like, it's all interlinked. So at the end of the day, if you're communicating, you need to coordinate and interact with a lot of people. So there's internal communications and there's external communications, where you will be working more with companies, or with corporate communications. Corporates have a lot of communication activities. So there are different kinds there, where it's more about internally coordinating between the different departments of a company, writing their magazines or newsletters, maintaining their website, generating content for the website or for their blog. And external would be also something similar, except that what happens with a lot of companies, for example, corporate communications, is where you get into also handling the press. So you've seen one side of the press now, where I talked about journalism and how a newsroom will work. And the other side is where you're coming from a company perspective, and you're interacting with the press to make sure that what you want to say is getting out there. Or sometimes, if there is a crisis and the press is reaching out for a clarity on something in a particular company, for example, you make sure that you clarify all those issues, to make sure that the brand or the company that you're working for is not in trouble, right? So that's what corporate communications especially entails, a lot of these things, where you do handle the press, you do handle internal communications, magazines, newsletters, and a lot of coordination within the company. I would, it's always good where internal communications, um, it's a good place to start with if you are transitioning from journalism or content writing into communications. Internal communications is useful because you understand the company very well before you get into the external part of it. So it's better, it gives you a better sense, a better idea of how to communicate and what goes into the um, goes into the company. And the external communication is also a lot about launches, and if you want to put out something which is a big announcement or something, and you want to externally make sure that it's published in the press and all that, so you're interacting with the press, you're making sure that this comes out, and you're also handling the brand in a way. So there are different aspects, but again, the thread across all these fields that I talked about is communication, and communicating clearly what you want to say. That could be through writing, through broadcast, or through online. So it's up to you on what you want to choose, what you're comfortable with, and how you want to do it. So I think I've covered all the major points that I wanted to talk about. And I don't want to bore you too much beyond this. So I will stop here. And if there are any questions, then I'd like to address them directly.
Thanks, ma'am. We do have few questions. If you can take up questions, I'll be happy to raise them now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. Uh, is it possible for me to become super rich with journalism as a career?
Okay. It's possible to become super rich with a lot of careers, but I'm not very sure if you can start off by being super rich. That is for sure. I think no job can get you there immediately. It will take some effort. uh, I don't know if super rich is a term I would use right now, especially. I'm keeping only the current context in mind because of COVID, and a lot of people are getting impacted by it. You must understand that there's a lot of salary cuts across industries, not just journalism. So it will depend on how we kind of evolve from the situation and how things grow for me to tell you how rich you can be later. But it takes a certain, you have to reach a certain level for you to earn very well. It will not happen right in the beginning. That is not something that will happen in journalism. I don't think it happens even in other fields, but yeah, with journalism, I can specifically say it can't be like super rich as soon as you start. That is not something that I can actually guarantee. And right now, with the current circumstances, I think we have to be a little more practical that there may be changes, across different fields.
Thanks, ma'am. Another question. Uh, does journalism involve travel, abroad travel specifically? Do I get the opportunity to go abroad for the official work purpose?
Yeah, so this may not happen all the time, but there are certain things called junkets in journalism where, like I said, if a particular brand or a company wants you to write about it, they will sponsor trips for journalists for them to go to a particular place. For example, a university or a tourism, a government tourism section also can call journalists, and they can sponsor your trip. They may invite you. There are options where you can go abroad or locally to different places, and for a few days and cover what is happening, what they've invited you for. Those are options that is there in journalism, but it's not like that is probably, it may happen once a year. It's not something that's going to happen, and it may not even happen for everybody once a year. It may be like a few people who may go for that, but it's not something that is a big part of it. See, what happens with a lot of journalism related fields is that you are, suppose you're working for a particular company in a particular city, and you are covering local news, that is your city news, you will be required to stay in the city because that is your main priority, to cover that city news. Or to cover, for example, Tamil Nadu news, you may travel within the state once in a while to cover news related to Tamil Nadu, but you may not really venture out because with journalism there are different centers. So there's a center in Bangalore, there's a center in Chennai, there's a center in Trichy, there's a center everywhere. So people who are there at the local level will already cover those things. It's only when certain things, maybe you may have to travel for, suppose you're doing a collaborative thing where a Delhi center and a Chennai center is working together, you may travel in between to work on a particular uh, big story, but it's not often that you will travel like that. If you want to get into travel space, then you may have to get into certain travel related channels or blogs or something like that. Not um, I don't think a newspaper or a TV channel is going to send you out like that, because they would want you to cover the local news, because they have different people for different centers already. But there are certain opportunities like junkets that may come once in a while. Yeah.
Thanks, ma'am. Another question. How did your parents respond to you when you chose journalism as your career?
I didn't have any issue because I, I mean, I was see my whole thing is I love English. I've always liked it. I've liked reading. I've liked talking, and I used to do these small interviews of my, classmates in high school. So I used to do all these things where it was just fun for me. I really liked it. So, I mean, when you like something a lot, it kind of shows automatically, and I think you don't have to uh, convince too hard. I mean, you'll have to tell them why you like it and that you're serious about it, but it's no it's about how much you like something. For example, if you really love science and you want to do something in science, you will do it anyway, right? So if you like something to do with languages and to do with interacting and writing, I mean, that is what I liked. I liked writing. I liked interacting with people, and I loved English. I loved anything to do with English. So I just wanted to go in that direction. The other option, just because you're in school, I'm just telling you. So my big confusion was between biology and English, because I love both those subjects a lot. It is just that when you get into pure sciences, there's a whole other scope of things that come. And I was thinking I wanted more of an active, like going out kind of a job. So which is why I chose journalism. But you have to talk to your parents and tell them what you feel honestly. I think that is the only way to go with it. No, I mean, be honest. I mean, and if you're sincere about what you like, it will automatically come through, even if it takes a little time.
Thanks, ma'am. And the last question here. We know you've reported a lot of crime beats. What is most exciting part of crime reporting?
I think the fact that anything can happen anytime, and that you just have to go. Uh, that unpredictability, it can be sometimes, it can take you aback, but it's also very exciting when um, something really big happens and you're part of it. You're in the thick of it, and you know, you're. It's very interesting. Also, there are certain cases which are extremely interesting where you may never get the solutions or answers. For example, can I share an anecdote here? If so, there was one instance where there was an assault on a couple of women that had happened, and we had to write about what had happened with them. So two of us, me and another reporter, we both of us had gone to this house where the girls were too scared to come out and talk to us, right? Because they had already been through the assault and they were very scared of venturing out. And so, we had to stand outside and hold a recorder through the window where they could actually talk to us at night, because it was pretty late, but that was the only time we could get them. There are certain things like this where, it's not easy to get this, but when you get somebody who actually with a lot of difficulty, and they're sharing something so personal with you, and it becomes a very personal moment between you and such people. And it's not to glamorize or to say that, oh, assault is obviously a bad thing, but I'm saying the fact that someone was willing to speak to us about it, and it was something very different from what you've done. And then it turned out that actually the people who attacked them were living right there upstairs in the same building, which we never knew. It was a little, I mean, thank God we didn't go upstairs. Is the only thing we were thinking. But sometimes there are certain things like this which is very strange, and you just realize it could have been certain things like this which at that point of time excited that, oh, we were getting to talk to somebody who was not willing to talk to anybody else, but who was able to share a personal thing with you. It's about getting into the people's lives, and the way they, not to pry or probe into it, don't impose yourself into it, that I don't respect that. But when someone on their own wants to talk to you, and you get to know certain things which you never knew, it exposes you to a whole other thing, because with journalism you see like a lot of the highs, you see a lot of the, there's a lot of rich, uh, big conferences, big hotels, big events. You see all that, but you also see a lot of, the poverty. You see a lot of the struggles of, a different section of people. So you're seeing both. It's a huge contrast, and that is very exciting to see, because we live in a society where there's so much happening, and sometimes you tend to forget. So the exposure you get of seeing these different sections of people, that is actually exciting in a way to look into how different people operate. So that was nice. That is very interesting for me.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that's it. Those are the questions, right?
Yes, ma'am. Those were the questions. Thank you so much for taking time to answer our queries.
Sure, sure.
Um,
I hope I was able to give some clarity and guide them in some, even if it's a little way. I hope I was able to help, and that I did not bore anybody. That is
no,
so,
ma'am.
yeah.
We'll move on to the vote of thanks, ma'am.
Sure.
The essence of all beautiful art is gratitude. I deem it a great honor to propose vote of thanks in making this a successful webinar. On behalf of Sriniketan Group of Schools, I would like to thank our speaker and resource person, Ms. Vinaya Sri Jagdish, for the excellent session today. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. I would like to express our profound gratitude to our correspondent and directors for arranging such enlightening sessions. I would also like to thank our beloved principal for her moral support and guidance. My heartfelt thanks to our audience for your active participation. With these warm words, we move to the end of today's webinar. Thank you for your cordial cooperation. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you so much.